Hello and welcome, everybody. So my name is Stephen Fortuna, and this is the show where we bring together experts to break down some of the most fundamental topics in HR. So I have three amazing guests joining me today. Here they are. We've got Sheena Blavelt, who's HR director at USANA. We have Sakura Martin, who's an HR manager at Energy Harbor. And finally, we have Stephen Farber, the talent retention Sherpa. Um, so say hello, everybody. Glad to have each of you on. We were kind of joking beforehand that we have a lot of S's in this group, so that consonant is going to be used a lot throughout this conversation. But so glad to be here. The topic we're discussing today is onboarding buddies, and I have to say, this sounds like a fun one, right? We got the word buddy in the name, so obviously this is going to be a fun conversation, a fun topic for HR professionals to adopt in the organization. But I want to start out with some definitions here. So, what exactly is an onboarding buddy? And I want to throw this one to Stephen, if you want to cue us off here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the idea of onboarding buddies. I've actually heard it called mentoring as well. And I think those are two separate things, in all honesty. But I think whenever you bring on new talent to your team, if you can have somebody who is stylistically like that person or in the same position that can kind of help guide them so that they don't feel like they're being thrown into the fire first thing, that's going to give them such a great impression. Not only of your company, but they're going to come just ready to rock and roll that first week. So it's definitely a fantastic thing. I don't see it done enough. And I think I think having something like this to talk about that is a really big deal. I know some of the problems that people may be wary of is pulling somebody from their productivity to do that. But I think creating a program and really kind of layering it out first is a good place to start. So I think I answered your question and then went on a tangent per usual. So
No, that's great, Stephen. So it sounds like a matching up of new hires with more seasoned employees. Sheena, how would you expand on that? And also, I'd love your thoughts on like that point that Stephen made that you don't see this very often. Have you seen this done successfully? In addition to kind of
Yeah, I've definitely, so my definition of maybe an onboarding buddy is, just the other thing that I call them is a sponsor. So they are someone who is there to support that new employee. You can call it a lot of different things, but if I think about my first day at work, it's a nervous experience probably for most people. And if you're able to connect someone with a person who has been there and done it before, they're much more likely to feel like they belong. And I'll go into some details a little bit later about some research that's been done. But I really see the program, an onboarding buddy program, as just being a connection that you're making between someone who's been there a long time and a new employee. Remind me, what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just curious if you've seen it done successfully. Like if you have any examples or, and I really what I want to get at here is like, is this something that every company should be doing? Are there certain teams or certain like industries that this should be more common? Yeah.
I think it's probably a little bit newer of an idea than some other ideas out there. So you don't see it very frequently, but I think it is becoming more popular in organizations. And I have seen it done, maybe not as formally as we're talking about here, but I have seen it done successfully. And Gallup has actually done a lot of research to show that, creating that friendship at work provides actually guarantees employees more engagement, more sense of belonging at work, which is what people are really looking for these days. They want that purpose and belonging at work, and creating that friendship or helping them connect with someone really helps with that. I think, honestly, this applies to any organization, big or small. I know sometimes, a lot of the times, best practice is to try to connect someone with another individual who's done that job before and knows the job. But if your company is small and you can't do that, I honestly think that you could connect them with anyone in the company. Maybe they don't know how to do your specific job, but they know the unwritten rules or culture things or trends that are happening in the organization. So I think it's possible anywhere and everywhere. Of course, you just have to mold it a little bit to work for your organization.
Yeah. Lots of great thoughts there. And I want to spend actually a good majority of our time eventually getting into some of those points you brought up around how do we match people up, and who makes sense to connect with, who is a sponsor, mentor, onboarding buddy. But I want to spend one more second and bring Sakura into the conversation here around the why of this. Because like Sheena, like you were saying, this is it's kind of a new concept maybe, and a new paradigm of work that we need to be connected. And that's a big part of engagement. And which is kind of a shift away from a compliance mindset, that there needs to be friendships and things. But Sakura, I'd love to bring you in here. What do you see as some of the major benefits companies can gain by adopting onboarding buddy program?
For me, I've seen it done at other organizations, and it's really an ally. You have an automatic friend, that one person you can go to and ask those questions that you don't want to ask anyone in your department. At a previous company, the onboarding buddy was part of the welcome committee, so they weren't in your department. So you could ask, hey, Jim seems kind of grumpy. Is that who he is as a person? And oh yeah, that's Jim, right? So you can ask those questions and not feel like you stepped on a tenured employee's toes by asking those questions. And it works. You have a friend to go. We usually encourage them to take them out to lunch. The company will actually give them money to take that person out to lunch, whether it was in the cafeteria or off-site, because we want that person to have day one, that ally, that friend, that buddy, to say, hey, I'm here, I'm supporting you, even if, your department, you haven't really clicked with anyone yet, but you're going to, your first friend assigned. The onboard buddies are great for me because I feel like I become the employee's best friends because that's the only person they know. So it's another person they can go to besides myself on that first day. So I think it's a great reason for one of those, mainly that as well.
Yeah. Love that, Sakura. Especially just the comment around like having somebody you can be vulnerable with or ask those weird questions to, and kind of have a peer or whoever to have that. That's awesome. So I want to talk about now then matching people up. How do we pick the onboarding buddies? This feels like a big thing. You guys have all brought up, these are your friends. Like maybe this is a best friend. This is going to be somebody you can rely on. It's kind of a lot of pressure to create like a good relationship here. So I want everyone's thoughts on this. And maybe we'll start with Steven, but let's imagine for a second, you've got that cohort of new hires coming in and you have all of your seasoned employees. How do you start matching people up?
So, and I would love for Sheena and Sakura, one, to either correct me or add to me on this, but I think besides the obvious of trying to potentially match them with somebody who's doing the same work that they're doing, finding somebody who's kind of naturally harmonious and relationship driven. The person who is people oriented, because when we're talking about personalities, you probably don't want to put them with somebody who's very driven, because they're probably just going to blank out and keep refocusing on the job, give them that bad impression like, oh, they really don't care about me. But when you find those other people that are very relationship oriented, they're gonna be the best listeners. They're gonna be able to do, to Sakura's point, like, hey, is Bob hate me? I just met him. Like, no, that's just Bob. That first impression is make or break. So I think when you're choosing somebody, something big is find that champion, maybe even make that a champion ambassador role or something, make them the onboarding champion. And then that person, maybe even incentivize it for them as well. But that person can be like the dedicated new hire helper. And they're going to enjoy that because that's what they do anyway. They're people oriented. So that would be my advice on that.
Yeah. Love it. Sheena, what would you add to that?
Those are all very important points. And I actually love the idea of like creating a group of like a welcome committee or something like that we're continually using. I love that idea. The other thing I would say, Stephen mentioned a champion, but a culture champion. You definitely want to pair your new employees with people who are champions of your culture, who believe in your organization and think positively about your organization, because that's really the feeling that you're trying to instill in your new employees. You want them to believe in what you're doing. you want to replicate that feeling. And who knows, maybe this new employee can be a culture champion a little bit later down the road. So I think definitely a culture champion. And with that, someone who has been there a little while, who knows the ins and outs of the organization, like where, simple things or silly things that they don't want to ask their manager, but, where is the nearest restroom? So someone who knows those things, like, like I mentioned before, the unspoken parts about your culture, but ultimately someone who is a culture champion and someone who is performing successfully. You definitely don't want to put extra burden on someone who is not performing well. And you also, I don't believe you want to replicate those traits. So looking at someone who's successfully doing the job, if you're pairing them with someone who is doing a similar job, and then also your culture champions, I think are great people for onboarding buddies.
Yeah. I'm really getting this picture of almost like this contagious, like culture, high performer, friend person. I mean, I have to imagine that a company only has a few of those, like who are really like good, but like you're wanting them to pass that on. So that's really interesting. Sorry, Sakura, I cut you off. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
No, that's perfect. I think what's been said so far is good. Only thing I would say I would add is I typically like this person, as I say, a pulse check person. So when, like, for example, I'm putting on an employee, picnic, and I'm like, oh, let's do this. What do you think? I remember when I worked at the art museum, one employee said, those prizes suck. They gave out those prizes last year. It was my first party. And I'm like, I had no idea, right? I want the honest employee to be that onboarding buddy, because they will be objective. Like, hey, the benefits are great. You got to work really hard if you want a promotion. Someone who's going to be realistic with that person. I enjoy those employees who are willing to tell the HR manager, like, yeah, they gave those prizes out last year and they sucked. In particular, it was a art book, and I didn't realize it. I'm new to the organization. I'm putting a party together, part of my job, and they're like, we gave these prizes out last year. And I'm like, okay, I guess we'll give out more this year. And one of the boys came up to me and was like, we don't want the art book. And I was like, oh, okay. So that person was a good connect. They actually ended up leading that welcome committee because they were vocal about what employees truly want. And I relied on that person to really be objective when we were doing events. So people come, at the end of the day, I want and a person who's engaged enough and have a good pulse on the population to really be objective. So that would be a person who can be objective of, hey, they're always good in the bag. Everything's not going to be peachy keen, but if you work hard, you'll get the things that you want in the company. I want that type of person to be part of that onboarding committee. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Just the honesty, for sure. We've got a couple comments, so I want to bring these in and read them real quick. You want someone who can give you an overview of the organization, but also guide you on your first day or week. So it sounds like a big focus in specifically that first period of time. And then another thought here, realistic, which I think is what you're getting at, Sakura. Also, this LinkedIn user, include feedback about the mentor and buddy in the onboarding feedback survey. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but great thoughts here. So I want to kind of double click on this idea, because this person seems to get rarer and rarer the more we describe them. And you were kind of hinting at, I think a few of you were hinting at the idea of maybe having even just a few dedicated people who do this for all new hires. Tell me more about that. Do you think like every employee in your organization should be matched up with somebody at some point and have the opportunity to be an onboarding buddy? Or do you really just hone in on those, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 people who you really believe in and train up and know are going to do a good job, and have them just every new cohort they're involved with? And I want to open this up to whoever has any thoughts.
I'm happy to start out and just say, I think it depends on your organization. You've got organizations of 50 people or thousands of people. So that'll be one determining factor of how you do this, and what you have available in terms of resources. and people and resources within your organization. So based on what your organization size and needs, I think you would be able to determine what that program looks like, whether it's a few people or, it's a person in every department. But I really think it depends on the organization.
Yeah. So Cora, I saw you unmute yourself too. Did you have something you wanted to add there?
I was going to say, it definitely depends on the size of the organization. Like I said previously, we had a committee. That committee was, the welcome committee, but they also had influence on employee events and parties and recognition. They really were the cheerleaders of the company. So I do think you need a group. I think you will wear out one or two people. So you do need a committee of folks to kind of rotate. And every person, I feel like, I can't always say every person got one, but I feel like the majority did. Because some positions, we will hire 10 of them, and we would just have more people than we had buddies, So I think the goal was to have one person per new hire, but I don't always think that was always able to. So people had to share. Maybe, complete it and, and then start over, start a new relationship with a person. Because at some point, some companies I've worked for, the hiring was just so many at one time. It was hard to keep up. So it would not always be day one, but maybe like second week that person can touch base with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Great thoughts there. So I think we covered that pretty well. Let's move into kind of the activities. So you've got the matches made. It's a match made in heaven. These people are just going to hit it off. And what do you have them do? I know Sakura already mentioned, they actually pay for them to go out to lunch together. And I'll actually let you elaborate. Sakura, is there anything else that you guys specifically have the onboarding buddies do with their buddies?
Yeah, that's the number one. Going to lunch the first day, because we always felt like it would be the kid at the lunchroom sitting by themselves because they don't know anyone. That's always the theory. And then also making sure they attend, grabbing that person and attending the first, we had an all-hands meeting quarterly, so the onboarding buddy would grab that person to make sure they were coming, because it was an optional meeting and some people would duck out, but we would put that new hires on a PowerPoint, say where they were from, what department they're in. Some people don't like that type of recognition, so the onboarding buddy would make sure they came to make sure they got the recognition. So that was one of the things, make sure they came to that, company meeting to be announced and, welcome people, sit next to them, stuff like that. So that was one of the other things that they did as well.
Awesome. So great. Yes, I'm seeing, they're appearing at the most awkward social moments and being a friend at those all hands lunch. I want to kick it over to you, Stephen. What other things would you like to see onboarding buddies kind of do?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of piggybacking off of what Sakura was saying there is kind of being that mediator between meeting someone new. If they could make the introductions, that was huge for me whenever I had again, they called it mentorship. I think that was it wasn't really mentorship. It was an onboarding buddy. And that person literally would take me around and make sure I knew everybody, even the people I was trying to avoid. And that was good because I had already made bad assumptions about certain people and I'm just stay away from them. It's like, are you kidding me? This person's going to make your life so much easier. You have to meet them. Those are very impactful things that someone can do. So again, I think it's important that they be that person who connects you to the rest of the organization so that you become a culture. And then I think it was Sheena who made this point right when we started. I think they definitely need to be pro company at the same time, because you're going to have those other people who might have got a little bit of a root of bitterness at some point. And if you're not well connected with them as a manager, you might assume that they're gung-ho for you and your company, but I've seen it firsthand where they will start talking trash as soon as they get the chance. So when you find somebody who actually believes in the vision, believes in the company, and then is a good connector at that point. So I think that's I'm done talking. There we go. Yeah.
That was great, Stephen. Making the intros. Yeah, I mean, that's not like a formal thing either. That's just like they have to kind of take some initiative and intro you to people in the company. Sheena, I want to bring it to you. And actually, we have an interesting audience question that kind of adds an additional spin to this. So, what are some of the best remote onboarding buddy insights the team can share? So again, Sheena, you're welcome to kind of comment on what we've been talking about so far, but let's also talk about remote wise, what different things can onboarding buddy relationships look like?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I would say the onboarding buddy, it is important for them to be a connector, like Stephen was saying. Even if it's, a question like, hey, how do I get a hold of IT, or how do I get my computer updated? Like, it's good to have someone who can connect them, or how do I get access to a certain program? So I think it's great for the onboarding buddy to be that connector, but also I think some other activities you can have them do. This would be for in person, but like tours around the building, showing them where different things are, and also showing them, maybe different programs that the company uses. I mean, we're now in the day and age of remote work, and so what forms of communication do we use? Do people use the telephone still, cell phones, text, WebEx, Teams, Zoom, who knows? But what are the norms there? So helping them understand what the norms are in terms of communication methods. I would say for remote, and I also love the idea of paying for them to take that individual to lunch. That helps them build a connection a bit. But in terms of remote employees, I think it's great to, that first day or week, depending on their schedule, make sure that they connect via whatever virtual platform it is, and maybe give the onboarding buddy some guidelines as to, here are some talking tips for getting to know your onboarding buddy. Make sure your onboarding buddy knows what the purpose of their conversation is, and the purpose should really be for them to get to know each other and make a connection. So maybe you're giving an intro about yourself and what you do, how long you've been there, what you love about the company, maybe something personal, and then encourage the new employee to also share something about themselves so that you are making that connection between the two. But I think for remote workers, encouraging that first opportunity to connect between the onboarding buddy and the employee is a way you can make that connection, make it happen or start to happen. And then of course, make sure that your new employee knows how to get a hold of their onboarding buddy if they're not in the same office. How do you call them on the phone, email, what's the best way to do that? There are also lots of fun programs out there, like you can send coffee or hot chocolate tasting packets to the two of them, and then they can talk about like what their favorite is. That's a little bit more like fun and maybe a little more administrative work, but there are lots of fun activities out there. A lot of people have been working remote for 2-3 years now, so there are a lot of things out there. You just Google ideas.
Yeah. Great advice there, Sheena. And Sakura, I saw you kind of thumb upping that the chocolate.
Yeah, the chocolate and the wine tasting. I was just gonna say, when we went virtual at my previous company, before we went virtual, we had happy hour on Fridays. But when we're all virtual, it's kind of hard to have happy hour. But we still have virtual happy hour, and company delivered like little wine bottles one time. We were like, oh my gosh, we loved it. But I would imagine you can still do the same type of activities where you can't do an actual lunch, but you can have a virtual lunch, virtual happy hour, and meet with your team and then engage in that way. I haven't really been in this situation with online remote and onboarding, but you kind of like stopped everything with COVID. But that's a great idea to incorporate that instead. So I just thought about that. Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah, it's great. Sounds like the consensus here is you can actually do a lot of the same stuff, but just with a little bit of additional kind of logistics figured out, you can make it happen. So instead of a facilities tour, you're giving them a tour of Slack or something. Instead of a in-person event, you're sending food directly to them and getting them on Zoom or something. Sounds like that's kind of the consensus. So thanks for that question. Let's talk about the scope of the onboarding buddy relationship. And this is really interesting to me. So is this do you see this being like a week-long thing, or is this as long as they're both at the company you want them to be friends? I don't know if that's a weird question, but Stephen, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I hope it's more than a week-long thing, right? Otherwise, it's going to look fake from the perspective of the new employee. But it doesn't take much to make a friendship whenever you can work on really getting to know that other person. And that's why I think it's a good idea to try and find relationship-oriented people, because they're so good at this. Is they know who they are, and they can easily just flex over, use social awareness, and kind of get to know this other person, even if they're a little different. I think the only problem might actually be for the onboarding buddy, because those people typically are the ones that they fight so hard for others that they don't really take care of themselves. So I think a point that was made earlier was definitely, rotate if you can. Don't let that other person get compassion fatigue, because that will happen really quick. And they are the last people to tell you. You will never know a relationship-driven person is stressed out. It's exploding on the inside, or rather imploding, as we like to call it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great insight there. Imploding on the inside. Yeah, that's a scary mental image. So it sounds like you got to look out for your onboarding buddies. Make sure they're doing okay too. They need their own buddies, which I guess is what HR can do. Great. Let's talk about. So actually, kind of take a step back from onboarding buddies, because Stephen, I think you covered that question really well. Let's take a step back for a second from the tactic of onboarding buddies and think more about the general strategy of making friends and making sure people feel welcomed when they come in. And I want to give an opportunity to everyone to answer this one, but is there anything else you'd recommend that could help foster friendships and relationships for new hires that's kind of outside the scope of onboarding buddies? Like, what are some other tactics that you see? Sakura, or okay, Sheena, I see you unmuting first. So why don't we send it to you, and then maybe Sakura has some thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, that's just my personality style. I'm going to jump on it really quick.
Yes.
So, one of the things that we actually do at USANA, where I'm at currently, every quarter we get our executives together, and every new employee who was hired that first quarter gets to come to lunch with that executive, just to learn that these are humans. They're people you can talk to. We give them all sorts of swag. So they're like, yeah, we're part of this company. We'll represent this company. We play a fun Jeopardy type game online. It's a digital one. We provide lunch for them. And then their onboarding buddies or their supervisors, whoever it is, can come with them and enjoy some of the fun. But it helps them learn a little bit about the culture. And the Jeopardy game that we play actually asks a lot of questions about our culture. So nice. Those who get the most points win extra swag. But that's really an opportunity to bring them all together, help them connect with our executives at the highest level. Of course, you've got to have buy-in from the executives that this is a good thing for them to be spending their time on. Luckily enough, where I am, they absolutely believe in that. But that has been a huge success for us.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great example. Sakura, and then Stephen, if you have anything to add. Yeah, go ahead.
Sheena stole our company idea. Except for yours sounds way cooler. I'm going to steal a Jeopardy. I was like, I'm going to say that. We do the company luncheon with the executives, and the employees love it. But I love the Jeopardy idea. I've played Family Feud before, but not Jeopardy. I think Jeopardy would be good for more company swag. I'm going to have to steal that. But I'm just going to add that the same thing, doing the quarterly luncheon with the executives and having conversations about career development. And I like to invite the more tenured employees who have been promoted throughout the company over the years, so they can just see the growth is there if you want it, So that would be the only other thing. So, yeah.
Love this. Love that you guys are introducing them to, like you said, senior leaders, tenured people. They see that they have a future of the company, that the company's in good hands. That's really cool. Stephen, what would you add? What do you think HR professionals could do better during onboarding to create friendships and make people feel comfortable?
Sure. And Sheena, to your personality, you're what we like to call an eagle. You just get it done. You jump on it, right? So, yeah. And what we did this for a client this week, actually. They have a very interesting business, and because they are kind of along the lines of a homeless shelter, they've been getting a lot of political blowback from where we are. So not only are they already completely strained and fatigued for taking care of people, they're being told that they're enabling people, and it's rough. So, they came and did personality testing with us, and it doesn't have to be with DISC. It could be Myers-Briggs. It could be anything. But when you can teach your whole team about like who they are, it gets fun. We had a bunch of Eagles yesterday, and we were like, Eagles, can you tell us what it looks like over at the Doves water cooler, which is more of a relationship driven type of personality. And you had the Eagles drawing a bunch of hearts, and one of the people was crying around the water cooler. And it's purposely, you're trying to draw a little snark out. And of course the Doves just had two Eagles telling you're not the boss of me back and forth. So right. And what we found is that bringing a team together, and this kind of extends the idea of onboarding buddies, when you can have everybody know that, hey, we all may think and act and have different styles, but we can connect with each other. I think that's when you get some huge just kind of culture connection there. And I think from an onboarding perspective, really just grouping them with their like styles. If you know people's personality styles, and this person who just came on board is more of a parrot, very interactive person, man, give them the interactive onboarding buddy. You might have to watch the volume, but for the most part, they are going to have a lot of fun. So really just being intentional about who you're pairing them with and trying to do it for the whole team when you can. And you can do that, quarterly, just like anything else.
Yeah, that's great. Having those additional events and moments. We've got a supporter for Animal Disc.
Animal Disc.
So
love the birds.
Steven's loving the birds. But yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think there's that concept too, where you're saying it's like almost you want people to understand themselves at a deeper level so that they know how to connect other people.
Right.
Which is interesting. Okay. I love this conversation. Unfortunately, we are coming to an end here, but I want to give everyone one last moment. And this is kind of just your last moment to say any last bits of advice or wisdom that you would like to share. Just in a short sentence or two, what's your best piece of advice for people who are listening to this and excited and want to get started on their onboarding buddy program? Sakura, why don't you start us off?
I would say get feedback so that you can always improve. Like, people work for other companies, they always bring great ideas, and so get feedback. We do a 30, 60, 90-day feedback from our onboarding and from our new hires. So that'll be one. We always learn to improve and learn new ideas. So that'll be one.
Get feedback. Great point. Sheena, let's bump it over to you. What are your last bits of wisdom for people starting out their program?
Yeah, if you're going to jump into this, I say, determine what your goal is in creating this program. Identify your culture champions, help them understand what your goal is, set the expectation, and give them the tools to make it happen.
Yeah, love it. Last word to you, Steven.
That's a hard one to go after. Honestly, she covered it very well. The only thing I would add is just make sure that you are also covering your onboarding buddies. If they've gone through a couple of rounds, incentivize them. See if you can pay them more if they're motivated by that. And depending on what they like for recognition, anything from a private email to a plaque, do what needs to be done to keep them motivated, because they are the crux of what's keeping your new hires motivated as well. So they're just as, if not more important than the people you're bringing on board. Top talent is top talent.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Steven. And thank you, all three of you. This has been a great conversation. We always like to show this at the end. If you want to learn more about onboarding buddy programs, we have an article about this in our HR encyclopedia that our community has been working on. I think we have something like 30 articles on onboarding in general. So check that out. And also, please, please, please meet these panelists. Connect with them on LinkedIn. They're amazing people. I always enjoy these conversations. They always teach me something new, and they're so generous and just good people. So thank you three so much for being here. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.